everybody, and welcome to this short podcast for the Streatham Society. I'm Emma Fleming, one of the trustees, and along with our assistant Maia, we went along to the 50th anniversary party of the Society in 2024 to record some of the thoughts and memories from the guests about Streatham over the last 50 years. Our civic society has been keeping watch over the history, the changes and the wonderful eccentricities of this corner of South London. And there's only one place to start, of course. Streatham High Road certainly has a little bit of a reputation. So let's listen to how I found it when I first moved to Streatham 20 years ago, followed by Tim and Mandy. I mean, certainly even just over the last 20 years, when I moved here, I think that it definitely had a reputation for being the worst high street certainly in the UK, but probably in Europe. And then I arrived and I was like, this isn't so bad. I think partly because I grew up in a very rural area in the countryside. There are still loads of empty shops and stuff though, and I think it is a struggle to keep the high street going.
One issue about Streatham is that it's sort of around a very long high street, which kind of means that is not, so there's not a place that you can congregate. And actually there are different tribes within Streatham, depending on where you live. And I mean, here we're in Streatham Hill, which has got a character. Streatham Vale's got a different character area by the the ABC roads. It's all very different, but actually it's not as though you've got a town centre. And actually very rarely does anybody walk from Layham Court Road on Streatham High Road right through to Tesco's at the other end. It doesn't. People don't do that. So you hone in on different parts of the high road.
If you come down Streatham on the bus from Christchurch through Streatham Hill, it's still looking quite buoyant. Then you sort of go down towards the dip and it looks a bit sad, and then it picks up again towards the bottom. So yes, there has been some regeneration, but it doesn't cover all areas and it certainly hasn't benefited everybody.
But a high street as long as ours can't stay frozen in time. Landmarks disappear, businesses close, and some iconic buildings end up living on only in our collective memory. As Roger points out, seeing these independent community hubs vanish leaves a real gap in local culture.
There's always, Streatham is a transient area. So there's always great things going on and disappointments. It was amazing, for example, when the Hideaway came to Streatham, which was an amazing jazz venue, and clearly very disappointing when it's gone. Well, of course, the Streatham Hill Theatre is the classic example. Sadly, the premises was sold to a Brixton-based church, and now it kind of seems to be out of the hands of everybody. That's really sad because there was a huge feasibility study which looked at repurposing the site. There's always good restaurants that crop up, and we've got some good retailers involved now. Yes, we haven't got the department store we all know about, but there's always good things going on.
The fight to save Streatham Hill Theatre for future generations continues. But for those of us who live in Streatham, the ultimate battlefield of memory will always be a vanished department store. It was opened by one of Trudy's local heroes.
I think it's got to be Pratt. It's got to be Pratt because he just put the heart into Streatham with his shopping emporiums, and he's buried in the churchyard at St Leonard's. So it's got to be George Pratt, yeah.
It still lives on in the memories of local people. And here we have Trudy and Judy with their thoughts on its closure.
I do remember when Pratt's of Streatham closed, which was 1990. I remember my mum saying that had torn the heart out of Streatham.
Well, everywhere's changed.
Yeah.
And if I hear another word about Pratt's, I'll scream. Brian and I went to the last day when Pratt's closed. And yes, I was very sad. But if Pratt's came back now, nobody would use it. It had tiny little room with lots of stairs that were completely inaccessible, no room to display anything, and people wouldn't accept that now.
Yeah.
And of course the other big thing that's changed is shopping.
So if you're shopping in Streatham today, you might be going into one of the mega supermarkets on our high road. But this is Streatham, so our supermarkets have their own stories to tell as well. One of them I thought was very special just to me, but actually it turns out it has its own fascinating story. So we'll also hear from Trudy and our resident historian, Mr. John Brown, about why Big Sainsbury's is such an important historical site.
It is Big Sainsbury's because when my son was born, I was quite young. I wasn't young, I was 28, but most of the women who went to like mums and babies clubs were in their late 30s, early 40s, or they were much, much younger, like in their early 20s. And I was really in the middle and I felt very, very lonely. There wasn't anyone to talk to, and I would go in there and just push my little buggy up and down the aisles and buy some nappies or whatever, have a chat with whoever was on the checkout, and then and it would be like my little thing that I'd done that day, my little task that I'd managed to get out of the house. And when I go in, I have this real lightness of like, oh, I got through that really difficult bit of my life. And I know it sounds ridiculous that it's Sainsbury's, but it is a really old building, and I've talked about it on the tour guiding training and realised how many identities it's had in its life, from being the silk mill to being a like rubber and plastics factory to playing its part in the Second World War to being saved by, you know, the Streatham Society that we so yeah, I'm going to choose Big Sainsbury's. That's ridiculous.
I went to a school between 5 and 11 years old, my primary school. It's Emmanuel Church Primary School. It was where PB Cow's rubber factory was, which is now the Sainsbury's. It's now the Sainsbury's at the bottom of Streatham Common. That is a very evocative place for me. I don't particularly like the fact that it's a Sainsbury's, but what I do like is the fact that they've made the silk mill, you know, really, they've really preserved that, and that's great. One of the things that surprised me a lot about that place is that people that are working in the store, they've reported that they can hear children playing. Yeah, and that I find really, you know, that tugs at my heartstrings, because maybe I was that child, because me and my brother were there, you know, in the 1960s. But that whole site there with Emmanuel Church, which has been changed a lot, they changed that in the 1980s. Yeah, that really reminds me of my childhood. It's very evocative.
Well, if I had to name one single building, it would have to be Sainsbury's at Streatham Common, because the silk mill at Sainsbury's is one of the things that was going to be demolished. And in the Streatham Society, we placed an emergency conservation order on it. We went to a public inquiry and we preserved it. And it is the oldest purpose-built industrial building in London. And it's also where my mother worked during the war making beverage balloons. So it's got a family link as well as a heritage link. And plus the fact you get lots of bargains at Sainsbury's.
Purely as the mother of two hyperactive boys, I miss the go-karting rink. There's a big Tesco there now because they dismantled the original ice skating rink.
Yeah.
Once upon a time it was the largest and the best in Europe, and there would be international ice dancers. There was also even a Hollywood film, believe it or not, filmed there. With various ice dancing stars of the 1920s. And by the time I had a little look at it, it was looking rather sad, though friends of mine tell me that, you know, they spent many hours, you know, happy childhoods, whizzing around the rinks there, but that was demolished along with the go-karting facility in order to make a mega big Tesco and the current leisure centre, and presumably some
luxury
limited
flats
and some limited social housing.
Yeah. So wartime balloon factories, ghostly children, Hollywood film stars on ice. There's everything here in Streatham. And it's not just historical buildings, but also our legendary neighbours. And of course, no one looms larger in Streatham folklore than the infamous Cynthia Payne. John Brown recalls his memories of her, and then Mandy, Trudy and John will guide us back into the open air, because everybody, when asked the rapid fire question, what is your favourite space in Streatham, seemed to have exactly the same answer.
I had the great pleasure to meet Cynthia Payne, who came to speak to the Women's Institute. I didn't meet her in a professional capacity, but I used to see her in the shop with her trolley, and I got to know her. And she very kindly, God bless her, what a sweet dear old lady she was, she gave me a luncheon voucher, which she signed for me. But that was well after the luncheon voucher had any commercial value.
When I was made redundant and then decided I was not going to go back to work, I flirted with volunteering as a gardener at the Rookery. I joined Streatham WY, and then during COVID I found Streatham Society, all of which have been really brilliant things. They've added to my quality of life really beneficially.
The Rookery, yeah.
I think I'd have to say the Rookery Gardens.
One thing that would be amazing for Streatham is to have its own Streatham Museum, because as was said at the event earlier, John Brown he's got a museum in his house, but in addition to that there's lots and lots of other archives that could be brought into it. So I think it's really sad that we can't celebrate the fact that we have an amazing pedigree with fascinating developments over the years, and it's really sad we haven't got a place to bring it all together and put it on a more professional basis.
So a local civic society is about having a voice for our local area, archiving our history, surfacing those stories that otherwise would get forgotten. But it's also about the social side, bringing people together and creating community, something that is really important to both John and Trudy.
Well, I learn a lot about the history of Streatham and other places. I'm very interested in history. And I've met lots of brilliant people and gone on outings, and it's just really good socially. And I'm a Lambeth guide. I'm actually doing walks for the Streatham Society, and they've been really helpful on that. So it's sort of like a symbiotic relationship, really. We're helping each other.
Well, I think we're gradually beginning to bring things back to life. After the First World War, there was a lot of organisations, clubs, that ceased to operate because people had died. And then after the Second World War, that happened again. And then after COVID, that has happened. So I'd like to think that now we can build back, bringing back those organisations, those clubs and those groups that sadly didn't survive in COVID, because that's our sort of generation, and get them up off the ground again and get them working again. That would be really nice, because I enjoy that social sort of atmosphere, and to be able to do that would be great. Hasn't been possible with all of them at the moment, but we live in hope.
So finding and preserving these spaces is what the Streatham Society is all about, sharing those stories so that you can learn new things about Streatham, even if you've been resident for over 50 years, or maybe you just moved in last week. But as we look forward over the next 50 years, the challenge really is how to keep our community connected. So to close out this journey, here's Trustee Tim on what it really takes to move a community forward.
And I'm generally interested in local history and heritage. And then stepped up to being a trustee, mainly, I think, to help develop the Streatham Society moving forward. It's also providing a very good overview of the sort of history of the area, which the risk is if you don't have a civic society like the Streatham Society, that just gets lost.
Yeah.
And not only does it get lost, but it also, you can't recreate that so many years on, as it were.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that people do support it And it's not just turning up for talks; it's actually doing a bit more. And I think that's what the difficult thing for the Streatham Society moving forward is, I think.
Doing a little bit more. That is the challenge for our next 50 years here at the Streatham Society. If you would like to know more about us, or you'd like to join if you're not a member already, you don't have to live in Streatham, then you can find out more about us at our website, streathamsociety.org.uk, or have a look for us on social media. I would just like to say a huge heartfelt thank you to John, Trudy, Roger, Mandy, Tim, and of course Judy for sharing their memories with us, and to Maia for all her help putting together this recording. You've been listening to me, Emma Fleming, one of the Streatham Society trustees, producing this podcast in London in 2026. Thanks so much for listening, and maybe you'll hear from us again another time.